As more than 90 Islamic State terrorists stationed at a Libyan training camp some 30 miles off the coastal city of Sirte were doing their business as usual, the sky looked clear. Or so they thought. The militants did not know it yet, but an American spy plane was watching from above. As they left the concealment of their barracks and moved to an open space carrying their rifles, mortars, and other weaponry, they realized something was wrong. A dozen explosives soon hit the base, but it was too late to react. The ISIS camp was being attacked by America's most lethal aircraft, the B-2 stealth bomber, and only 3 of them were enough to create complete mayhem. Operation Odyssey Dawn. Operation Odyssey Dawn was the U.S. codename for the American military intervention in Libya to enforce the United Nations Security Council resolution of 1973. One of the operation's main objectives was to establish a no-fly zone over the skies of Libya to prevent government forces from aiding dictator Muammar Gaddafi with airstrikes against Libyan revolutionaries who opposed the regime. By then, Libya was burning. A civil war had divided the population between those that supported Gaddafi and those who didn't, and the anti-Gaddafi forces were supported by NATO members, the National Liberation Army, the National Transitional Council, and the Islamic Fighting Group. After a quick summit in Paris, French, American, and British aircraft began launching airstrikes over Benghazi. They were also supported by warships and submarines that sent devastating Tomahawk cruise missiles to destroy army garrisons fighting for Gaddafi. After almost a month of brutal bombing campaigns, the U.S. passed the Military Air Command to NATO, leading to Operation Unified Protector. Gaddafi was then caught by NTC militants on October 20th, 2011, at Sirte, his hometown. After 4 decades of dictatorship, he was finally gone, but it came at a high cost. Libya was in ashes, and the population was still divided into factions, hungry for power. Still, the Libyans started rebuilding their country, but the tensions quickly escalated. By 2014, the Islamic State, or ISIS, began to expand its self-proclaimed caliphate beyond Syria and Iraq. Soon, Libyan militants proclaimed their allegiance to ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and in 2015, these radicals took over Sirte and declared it part of the ISIS caliphate. The US was watching closely and took it upon themselves to solve the situation before Libya became another ISIS-controlled nation. Top secret takeoff. After taking over Sirte, the ISIS militants launched attacks on the rest of Libya. Meanwhile, the government of National Accord arrived at the city to retake it with the support of some 6,000 mercenaries. The U.S. Africa Command, based in Germany, oversaw the violent house-to-house combat operations unfold, and they had special forces operators, drones, aircraft, and other means to help the Libyans. By mid-July 2016, the Africa Command had carried out over 500 strikes on ISIS targets, with drones, Marine Corps Harrier jets, and helicopters. The more than 2,000 ISIS fighters were eventually decimated, but many survived the American airstrikes. The Air Force referred to them as squirters because they squirted out from their pressure of strikes and disappeared into the cities. Meanwhile, a group of about 100 militants ventured into the desert and established 2 camps about 30 miles southwest of Sirte to regroup and counterattack. Unfortunately, they made themselves open targets for the American strikes, as they were alone in the desert without any civilians. Consequently, President Barack Obama decided to get rid of this enemy once and for all, and did it in the most expensive way possible, by employing B-2 stealth bombers. A long, silent journey. Preparations for President Obama's bombing mission were carried out with extreme secrecy, and B-2 crews at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri and tankers from the Air Mobility Command were put on high alert. They had over 96 hours to coordinate a strike plan in Libya to eliminate the 2 isolated ISIS camps. Personnel from the base barely knew what was happening, but over 100 people were put in 12-hour shifts to assemble over 3,500 pieces worth and 78,000 pounds of explosives. The crews knew this was not a simple training run when they began loading the bomb load into the first B-2, and 2 more were getting ready. It was the first time since the 2011 Libya bombings that the B-2s would be taken out of their facility for an operation. Only 21 have ever been built by the US, and at $2.1 billion each, the air crews ensured the 3 bombers were ready for battle. The Air Mobility Command planned an air bridge of KC-10 extenders and KC-135 Stratotankers extending from New Jersey and Europe to get the 3 B-2 bombers to their target. Then, on the night of January 18th, the 3 B-2s took off for Libya, ready for a 30-hour-long journey. The 2-man crew in each aircraft was trained to perform any flight role, but it was still a relief that the B-2s had a small place behind the cockpit where they could stretch. They also had a toilet, some styrofoam coolers to store food, and a microwave. Discreet bombing. The first refuel happened above Maine, where a KC-135 Stratotanker attended the 3 B-2s. By the time the stealth bombers reached the Mediterranean, the pilots began programming the bombs that had not been readied before. Almost a quarter of the bombs were already coded to explode upon impact with any structure or vehicle, but the rest were now being programmed with the latest geographic coordinate of ISIS fighters near Sirte. Then came the second refueling, with tankers that flew from Germany. The 3 bombers then turned south and disappeared from air traffic control radar, about 250 miles north of the Libyan coastline. 15 hours into the flight, the bombers heard how Mission Control ordered the MQ-9 Reapers, armed with Hellfire missiles, to perform a second pass to finish off any ISIS survivor once the B-2 bombers had dropped their payload. When close to the target area, the B-2 pilots began approaching the enemy camps from an altitude of 35,000 feet at 480 miles per hour. Once there, the 3 aircraft opened their bomb bay doors and unleashed hell from above. The first B-2 dropped 62 out of the 80 bombs, while another released 23. Over 75 bombs were kept, in case another pass was needed. Down below, orange blows followed by clouds of sand could be seen as the bombs hit the targets. There was no way out for the ISIS militants. Each bomb detonated just above the objective to maximize damage, and those who survived were immediately followed by Reaper drones looking for squirters. The Hellfire missiles began to pick off every militant that tried to run away from the destroyed zone with pinpoint accuracy, and none survived the attack. It was all over in less than 5 minutes. Shortly afterward, the B-2s were cleared to head back home, and after more refuels and 33 hours in the air, they finally landed in Missouri. The mission had been a success. Sending a message. After the success of the classified operation, United States officials told the press on January 19, 2017, that 3 U.S. Air Force B-2 stealth bombers had struck 2 Islamic State camps some 28 miles south of Sirte on Wednesday night. Pentagon Press Secretary Peter Cook said in a statement, quote, "In conjunction with the Libyan government of national accord, the U.S. military conducted precision airstrikes Wednesday night, destroying 2 ISIS camps 45 kilometers southwest of Sirte." When asked about the justification of such an attack, Defense Secretary Ash Carter said that these dangerous fighters were, quote, "actively plotting operations in Europe." Other reporters questioned the Defense Secretary about using one of the most expensive bombers ever fielded by the United States Air Force to destroy an enemy that could be eliminated by less costly means. Carter explained that the S-2 stealth bombers were, quote, "the most capable tools for this mission, even though other available air power was closer to North Africa." The questions had some historical significance. During the past decade, the United States Air Force had been conducting airstrikes over Libya and the surroundings, with several American aircraft and drones coming directly from a base in England. And if that was not close enough, the U.S. Navy also had 2 guided missile destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles off the coast of Libya for immediate action. Despite this adamant and somewhat lacking argument, other intelligence sources claimed that the US acted this way to send a strategic message to adversaries such as China and Russia. Pentagon Press Secretary Peter Cook ended his statement by saying, quote, "The United States remains prepared to further support Libyan efforts to counter terrorist threats and to defeat ISIL in Libya. We are committed to maintaining pressure on ISIL and preventing them from establishing a safe haven." For the time being, the United States Air Force and its partners are working on the B-2 stealth bomber's successor, the B-21 Raider. There is little information about it, but Northrop Grumman has stated that it will be superior to its predecessor in every conceivable way. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like, and check out our other Dark Documentaries channels for more exciting military and historical content. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest videos. Stay tuned.